Welcome back. As we mentioned, we are just a few hours out from what Vice President Harris's campaign is touting as her closing argument speech here in Washington. The VP will be speaking from the Ellipse near the White House and the National Mall, the site of former President Donald Trump's remarks on January 6th, as she tells the country it's time to turn the page on Trump. A National Park spokesman says that the Harris campaign had amended their permit application tonight to accommodate more than 40,000 people. Joining me now is Michael Tyler. He's the communications director for the Harris campaign. Michael, thank you for being here. We are, of course, 1 week out. Kamala Harris giving what your campaign is billing as its closing message this evening on the Ellipse. What are we going to hear tonight, and who is this message targeted toward?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. We're very excited about tonight's closing argument. Listen, I think what you'll hear the vice president lay out is the fundamental choice in this election in prime time to the American people, particularly those voters who are still undecided, who are still deciding who they're going to support in this presidential election or whether or not they're going to vote at all. She's going to make clear that on January 20th, one person is going to occupy that building right behind me. Either Donald Trump is going to walk into that Oval Office every single day with his enemies list in hand, or Kamala Harris is going to walk in there with her to-do list of things that she wants to get done for the American people to lower costs like groceries, healthcare, housing, to make sure that we restore women's reproductive rights, to make sure that we actually bring people together in search of common solutions, right? That is a differentiator between her and Donald Trump, who, as you've seen, whether it's at Madison Square Garden or at the MAGA rallies throughout his campaign, his only currency is chaos, is division, is fear, and hatred in the absence of any actual solutions for the American people. So that's the contrast and the choice that she's going to present tonight, and then we're going to carry with us across the battleground states for the final week of this campaign.
And I hear you, and I see that the goal here tonight is about turning the page moving forward. If it's about the future, why hold it at a place that most of us remember as the speech that Donald Trump gave on January 6th?
Yeah, well, listen, we all remember what happened on January 6th when Donald Trump inspired a violent mob to try to overturn the results of a free and fair election. I think everybody remembers the harm that was caused that day. Of course, we will be thinking about that, but we're also going to talk about the harm that Donald Trump caused every single day when he sat behind the Resolute desk. And what the vice president is going to tell to the American people is that it doesn't have to be this way, right? We do not have to have leadership that traffics in chaos, that traffics in division, that celebrates violence every single day. We can actually have leadership that is focused on the people, that is focused on turning down the temperature, bringing people together and getting things done. That's what so many, particularly these undecided voters who are exhausted with the current brand of politics in the Trump era, they are looking for a new way forward. And that's exactly what the vice president has been talking about every day on the stump. And that's exactly what she's going to offer tonight.
And I understand the campaign has spent a lot of time trying to remind voters of the threat they believe Donald Trump poses. But I want to put up for you a piece of a recent story in the New York Times that maybe raises some questions about that strategy. In an email circulated to Democrats about what messages have been most effective in its internal testing, Future Forward, the leading pro-Harris super PAC, said that focusing on Mr. Trump's character and the fascist label were less persuasive than other messages. Is that true? Are those strategies less effective? And should she be talking more about her policy proposals and what she'll do in office as opposed to continuing to just talk about Donald Trump?
Well, I think she has been talking about her policy proposals and what she wants to do in office. She's been doing that since she launched this campaign. We've put out a range of proposals to lower costs for the American people, to spur small business growth, to make sure that American manufacturing remains right here in America. What I have not seen is Donald Trump do anything to that effect. His only economic policy that he's talked about since he's launched his campaign is another tax cut for the ultra rich. The only thing he's talking about for the middle class is across-the-board tax increase via his across-the-board tariffs, raising costs on American families by $4,000 a month. So you'll hear the vice president talk more about her economic plans tonight, where she wants to take this country. We do think it stands in stark contrast to what Donald Trump is offering up to middle-class families across this country. We think it's resonating with undecided voters who are still making up their minds over the course of this last week. And we're going to make sure that they hear that.
I want to change gears a little bit and play for you an exchange that Bernie Sanders had with Kristen Welker on Sunday about voters skeptical of Vice President Harris over the war in Gaza. Take a listen.
My own view has been that the United States should not continue to provide financial aid or offensive weapons to Netanyahu's right-wing extremist government. But what I would say to Layla, And to all those people who are thinking of not voting or maybe even voting for Trump, Trump is even worse on this issue. While I disagree with Biden and Harris, they are still better, a lot better than what Trump and Vance are talking about.
There are a lot of young voters in particular, Michael, who their number one issue is the situation in the Middle East and the conflict in particular. And they are not in line with the Biden-Harris position as it relates to the conflict and in particular what's happening in Gaza. Is it enough for those voters in particular to say that Trump is worse? Or does the campaign need to do more to explain to them why she should earn their vote?
Well, yeah, listen, I think what these voters want and what they're going to respond to is a candidate for office who actually approaches the situation with the seriousness that it deserves, who would sit inside the Situation Room every single day with the temperament and the judgment and the wisdom to actually manage complex global situations like the one that is playing out in the Mideast, who actually has America's national security interests at heart, who cares about our allies in the region, who cares about global security. I think what they do not want is an agent of chaos who's increasingly unhinged, who's increasingly unstable, whose only North Star is his own personal self-interest. That is a contrast that we're going to present to voters across the country as it relates to national security. And we think that voters will that will resonate with voters when they go to the ballot box.
Michael, I want to play for you something that we heard this afternoon from the Republican vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance. Take a listen to this.
And I want us to actually follow President Trump's lead here because, yeah, President Trump can dish it out as well as anybody. He's the best counterpuncher in American politics. But when President Trump goes after his political opponents, he goes after Kamala Harris and he goes after Tim Walz. He criticizes the people who stepped into the arena, which, again, is his right to do. Every person who steps into the arena asks for it. But you know what Donald Trump doesn't do? Donald Trump doesn't attack everybody who's going to vote for the other side as a fascist or a Nazi. He doesn't demean his fellow citizens, even the ones who aren't going to vote for him. And so I'd ask us to follow that lead.
Is that true? Do you feel like Kamala Harris has been attacking Trump voters or people that would support Donald Trump?
No, I think you also know that that's clearly a lie. Right? Donald Trump calls half of the country, everybody who disagrees with him, enemies of the people. Frankly, what the vice president has been referring to are the comments of people like John Kelly, his longest-serving chief of staff. She's been referring to the comments made by Esper, Milley, the people who served under Donald Trump, who know him best, who understand the threat that he poses to the American people. Those are their words, and it's why, frankly, so many people across the political spectrum, Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, are standing against Donald Trump and standing with Vice President Harris because they understand the threat that Donald Trump poses, and they understand that in Vice President Harris, there is somebody who is fit, capable of serving as commander-in-chief, and who would be focused on the people every single day as president of the United States. There's one candidate in this race for whom that's reality, and that's Vice President Harris.
All right, Michael Tyler, thank you. I know you had to fight through some background noise there to get through this interview. You did a yeoman's effort to make that happen. We appreciate it. And good luck the rest of the way on this campaign.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.